We are expecting an update on Manuel Ugarte's move to Manchester United shortly. They have a full agreement with PSG for the transfer of the midfielder. The deal is worth €60 million. We've been talking about this, haven't we? Manchester United always after a midfielder. It looks like they have finally got their man, Manuel Ugarte, to Manchester United. Probably means that Scott McTominay, been linked with Napoli, is on his way out. Dan, it makes sense to come to you first. Looks like Manchester United finally have their man.
Yeah, absolutely. And this deal has been talked about over the last few weeks. We know Manchester United have been looking for that number 6 in this window. But before any incomings, we have really understood this window for Manchester United, that for any arrivals, they've needed players to leave the club. Now, over the last few days, we've seen the likes of Hannibal being very closely linked to Burnley. It looks like that deal is on its way, or expected to be on its way. And it sounds like Scott McTominay as well could very well be on his way out of Old Trafford to Napoli. So it feels like Ugarte, you know, when you looked at the Brighton game and Fulham, actually, the first 2 games of the season for United, a few of those issues from last season still look to be there in terms of being countered through the middle. Casemiro still being a bit isolated. So it looks like this deal could really remedy that potentially.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to recap then, Manchester United have a full agreement with PSG for the signing of midfielder Manuel Ugarte. As I said, the deal worth €60 million, including performance-related add-ons. Ugarte is expected in the UK today to have a medical and sign off on those personal terms. PSG went into negotiations wanting the €60 million they paid Sporting Lisbon for last summer before bonuses. The clubs have compromised, giving the willingness from all parties to get a deal done. So Manuel Ugarte to Manchester United. Kwaku, when you looked at the options that Manchester United had in midfield, we've spoken about Casemiro, Scott McTominay probably leaving. This feels like the right move at the right time for, like we say, all parties.
Yeah, so Manchester United have got a very diverse midfield when it comes to personnel. We know that they were after Sander Berge earlier in the window, missed out on him. And Kobbie Mainoo and Bruno Fernandes bring specific skill set along with Mason Mount. But Manuel Ugarte, he covers grounds, he's a tough tackler, and he can provide the anchor in midfield that Manchester United have been looking for a long, long time. Casemiro is supposed to be that. In his first season, he was very good at the football club, but physically, he's declining. And we're lucky enough to talk to Tim Vickery over the last couple of weeks. He's compared Ugarte to Javier Mascherano, which you can see the comparisons, especially in terms of the way that he's tenacious in the tackle and the way that he covers spaces. And he can also play as well in terms of progressive passes. And so the move makes sense for Manchester United. They finally got this deal over the line. And I've talked about it over the last couple of weeks, but they need that physicality, and Manuel Ugarte definitely brings that to them.
I think he compares as well stylistically to N'Golo Kante as well. Now, obviously, you're not saying he's going to be that guy, because he's very difficult to replicate that guy. But he is someone who will cover a lot of ground. He'll put in a lot of tackles. He will try and drive with the ball and win some fouls. But I don't think United fans should be, excited for him to be delivering goals and assists, because that's not his game. He is there to screen the back four, essentially, and to make sure that he fills the holes that United need filling. And I think the game against Brighton, I didn't think it was that far away for United from winning the game. Now, I'm not saying that means they're that far away from getting in the top 4, because I still think there's a distance to go. But, I liked Manchester United's business last summer, and they didn't fulfil what I was expecting. And I like Manchester United's business this summer. Are they going to fulfil what we're expecting? What are we going to see on the pitch? Because when I'm watching Manchester United, I'm still not entirely sure what I'm going to see week by week. We know Erik ten Hag wants them to be the best transition side in the world. Ugarte will help them break up play and launch those attacks.
Yeah, and it's also a Man United side that have been porous in midfield over the last couple of seasons, and we saw that in the first game against Fulham. They were getting caught in transition, and not so much against Brighton. That was a different type of football match, but he will plug that gap, and he's a great complementary piece, and that's what I think he is. I don't think he's going to set the world alight at Manchester United. He's a player that he knows his role, and he does his role well. He did it at PSG, and he did it before playing in Portugal, but I don't think he's a player that is necessarily going to get you goals or get you those highlights, but he's going to complement Kobbie Mainoo and Bruno Fernandes nicely in that midfield. I think it's a really good sign. It fits in line with what Manchester United have been doing over the last year or so.
I think he was in the team of the tournament, wasn't he, for the Copa America this summer? So he's obviously coming into Manchester United in good shape, I suspect, this summer. I'm just wondering whether United fans would have wanted someone who can maybe do both roles alongside Kobbie Mainoo. You know, it feels like we put a lot of pressure on Mainoo to be the main man at United, and you forget how young he is, and he's still got a lot of development and potentially some mistakes to make as a player as well. And you know, if and when that does happen, you know, United fans shouldn't, and wider viewers shouldn't be piling in on Kobbie Mainoo, because he's such a talent. And United think and know that he's going to reach such a high level. I just wonder whether, and we spoke about it with Kevin Hatchard recently as well, whether someone like a Leon Goretzka would have made someone, maybe more sense as someone who can play as the deepest midfielder, but also can do a bit of what Kobbie Mainoo does as well, if he needs to come out of the team, or if he needs a bit of pressure taken off him. But having said that, I do like Ugarte. I think he does what United need and require in that midfield.
I just wonder as well, I mean, we're talking about Ugarte, and we have for a lot of the window as a potential replacement for Casemiro, but I actually think that it gives Erik ten Hag a lot more flexibility in midfield, and I think actually there are probably some games, perhaps against likes of Manchester City, Liverpool, where if they're more set up on the counter-attack, that actually he'd be a really good partner next to Casemiro, I think. And I think the Brighton game, as you mentioned, was different to Fulham. You know, their pressing was actually pretty good. But I think after that first line goes, you need that midfielder to, if your first line of press is beaten, your midfield has to win the ball. And I think that's where they may be lacking. I think Kobbie Mainoo, as you mentioned, has had such an amazing 12 months. But I think an area he still needs to improve is how he covers the ground and where he spends his energy. So I still think, even though we're talking a lot about Casemiro, Kobbie Mainoo is also not quite there yet. So Ugarte maybe fills both gaps.
Yeah, Kobbie Mainoo's definitely going to benefit from that. You don't want a player that young to get burnt out. It's so easy when you play so many games. Obviously, Manchester United in the Europa League as well this season. David, it's taken quite a while to get this transfer done. Why do you think that's been?
Well, I think, for one, I think you have to say PSG wanted, as you mentioned, to recoup most of, if not all of the money that they spent on the player. And I think it feels like United, under the new minority investment of Sir Jim Ratcliffe, are a little bit harder negotiators. I think they want to spend money, but I think they want to spend it in the right way and at the right amount. So I think they've taken a little bit of time to get there. I know some of the criticism of the previous regime was they just took too long. But I think from United's perspective, they needed to move players on. That was another key to this transfer happening. It looks like Scott McTominay is going to be going to Napoli in Serie A, so it means that they've now been able to push the button on Ugarte and get that done. So I think, you know, it has taken time, but I think it's been sensible.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, just to recap then, that's Manchester United have a full agreement with PSG for the signing of midfielder Manuel Ugarte, around 60 million euros, and he is expected in the UK today to have a medical